Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to this micro course for effective data visualization. Um, Here with me, I got Michelle. So this is our first trial. So sorry for a bit of misconvenience in the communication and such. We also were live before and still trying to figure how live events work with LinkedIn. So sorry for those who had to, who experienced that part. Yeah, it's a recorded session. We're with a few closed group. Maus van Plas van Haren, from the Van Haren group. This data visualization course is also a certification from the effective data visualization, part of the data and AI learning roadmap. It also has a lot of synergy with data literacy, another popular product. And then let's kick it off, Michel. Oh yeah, please, give your feedback and questions in the chat, and we can share them live. Michel, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Maurits. So, guys, I'm really excited this afternoon because I get a whole hour to share my passion for this topic. And first of all, it's about data, so I'm already in. But then it's about data visualization. And although the image that you're seeing here suggests something fancy and high tech, I hope I won't disappoint you. But we're not going to be talking about technology this time, because data visualization is needed for humans. We have something in our data. We found something in our data, and now we need to share with a broader audience. And therefore, we need to make sure that others also understand what we have found. And the vehicle to do so is data visualization. So I hope you all agree that we do this for human beings and not for robots or computers. They don't care. They have other ways to get to the data, but we do care. We need to get access to this data and understand it and see what patterns are in there, etc., etc. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this hour. I'll make sure that on the hour we'll stop, so we'll do that. I also have some questions for you guys, so be ready to type in some of your answers. I'm curious to see what you have as feedback. But let's start and see how that goes. Let me get to the slides. All right. First of all, I'd like to start with a small video. This is a video where you'll see an inspector trying to solve a crime, and I'd like to ask you all to see if you can help this inspector to solve the crime. So there are some cues and questions being raised. So let's see how well you are in helping this inspector solve the crime. Here you go.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
Well, let's see if anyone has seen all 21 changes. Let's have a look again at the video from a different angle.
Action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
Well, there you go. So there were 21 changes, and some of them were in your face. This inspector started with a very dark jacket and then changed over to a lighter jacket. So there was a huge change in there. Most of us, at least me, I didn't even notice it. I had to revisit this video over and over again to find out what was going on. And there you go. The thing there is that our vision system is not flawless. It is biased all the way, like we all are. And therefore, we need to have some basic understanding about how our brain processes visual information before we can decide what works and what doesn't work for visualization purposes. And again, we don't have to do a PhD degree in biology, but some basic knowledge about how this works is absolutely necessary. Obviously, you are probably aware of that our visual system works by light that comes into our eyes. And at the back of our eyes, this light signal is turned around into an electrical signal. And then the eye nerve goes all the way through our head. And at the back of our head, all the way at the back of our brain, is what we call the visual cortex. And this visual cortex is a magnificent piece of hardware we have, guys. Because what happens here is that the visual cortex decides whether it will need other parts of the brain to help out answering whatever question or interpreting the signal, etc. But for some signals, it doesn't need to go anywhere. It simply stays in this visual cortex. It's like a traffic tower on an airfield. It's trying to arrange all the traffic, but here, this visual cortex also got some very basic operations they can do all by themselves. Excellent stuff. Obviously, everything that the visual cortex can do itself, that's what we call fast. And everything where the visual cortex needs help from other parts of the brain is what we call slow. Still very vague, this concept of fast and slow. So let's make it a bit more concrete. Things like the following. How often every 24 hours does it become dark for you? I ask this question very often in the longer training session that we have. And most people will say maybe once, maybe twice, maybe a couple of more times. But if you think about it, every time we blink with our eyes, and that's about 20,000 times a day, it's dark for our brains, because most of us blink our eyes at the same time and there is no light. But this blinking is completely filtered out. Our brains and our visual cortex definitely is a great filtering machine. It simply filters out, because why would you want to see or experience the day you're awake like one blinking movie? That's not going to happen. So therefore it's filtered out. Or maybe something even more constant. If you look at it, most of us can see our nose when we look. But most of us don't remember seeing their nose if you think about in the situation you were. Because, again, this filter mechanism is filtering it out. Great stuff. It only tries to focus on the things it thinks it's important. And now we're getting to the grain. So this visual cortex is so object-oriented. It's so focused on getting something done, like the video we just saw where we were trying to help this inspector, that it starts filtering everything out which is not part of this objective that we have. Again, very vague still, so I brought with me a little test to see how well this visual cortex of you guys works. I'd like to ask you all to get ready to type in a number, because I'm going to ask you some questions, and the answer will be a single number, and I would like to ask you to put that in the comments so to see how well this goes. I would like to have a feeling how well does the visual cortex work of the audience of the session today. All right, so let's go for the test. What will happen? I'll do a countdown, and 3, 2, 1, and then I'll press the button. On the screen, you'll see a large number of objects. In this case, they're all squares. And I want you to count the number of red squares. So ignore everything else. Only the red ones are important. I count down, image comes, goes away directly again. And in between, you need to count how many red squares. And you type in that number in the comment field, please. All right? So let's do it. So let's count down, show you the image, goes away. You type in the number of red squares you have identified there. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, curious to see. How many red squares have you counted on that very short time frame? I see a hello, everyone. I'm not sure if that's the answer to the question. No, okay, Maurits, you didn't see any one of them? Okay, cool. Anyone else? Okay, there, Jelle and Nick, 3. Yeah. All right, 3, 3, 3, 3. Oh, there you go. Hey, guys, let me show you the answer. So the ones that are shown 3, or maybe 2 or 4, there's one thing. After this training, you can easily go out and talk to anyone around you and tell them, hey, my visual cortex works perfectly. Because this is a pretty heavy cognitive task, and your visual cortex was perfectly equipped to address this. Okay, so this was the practice round. Let's do this again. And this time you'll see squares and you'll see circles, and there's always the same color, it's all blue. And I'm asking you here, could you please count for me the number of circles? So ignore everything else, only how many circles. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. So how many circles have you guys have identified? And I need to get used to the delay on the emission, etc. But
There's a delay.
there you go. Jelle says 4, Koen 4, Nick 4. Wow. Lots of 4s. Oh my God. I only see 4s. I go back to my slides, and here's the answer. And 4 is the right answer. So if you're going to brag about how your visual cortex works today, make sure you brag about it really well, because your visual cortex works perfectly. And there's no issue there. So, okay, let's do one more just to wrap it up. One more test. And again, it will not hurt after this training. It's just a periodic effect that it will have. This case, you'll see blue and red objects. You'll see circles and you'll see squares. And I want to know how many are blue circles. Ignore everything else, only blue circles. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. So my expectations are super high, because you guys did it very well in the first and the second one. So I'm expecting great results for this third one. So curious to see how many circles in blue have you guys be able to see there. All right. I see that some people were very sure in the first 2 tests and now are getting a bit hesitant and guessing and etc. So I see 5 and 6 and 2. Okay, maybe 3 question mark. Yeah. I get it. Hey, independently what the right answer is, and I'll show it right away. I hope you see that where in the first 2 exercises you were all pretty convinced what the right answer was. So maybe you were 1 off or etc. But it was okay. And now suddenly we get something like somewhere between 2 and 7. Wow. And according to Nick, Maurits should have a bit more sleep. Yeah, hey, sometimes you can't decide on that yourself. But here you go. Here's the answer 4. And I perfectly understand that this one was way too difficult. Even if you would have guessed 4 and I would have asked you, how sure are you? You probably would have said, well, maybe not that sure. What had just happened is the following. The first 2 exercises where it was only color or only shape, these are attributes that our visual cortex can process by itself. In the last example, what I did is I combined the 2. So I used both form and I used color. And by combining them, the effect of being easy to digest for the visual cortex goes away. And this is a challenge. Both color and form are what we call so-called pre-attentive attributes. So these are attributes in our surroundings that we can process without having to think about it. It simply works. It's lightning fast. And therefore, this is what we're going to be using for our data visualizations. And shape and color are not the only ones, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to apply it to visuals and see what it is. But you can also see with this third test that we did, the moment you start combining them, the effect goes away. It gets worse. So be careful when you use this in data visualizations. And maybe the most important thing to remember, use less colors. Most of the visualizations I come across are way too colorful and our brain simply doesn't know what to focus on. And that's a challenge. That's a big challenge that we have. I hope you also agree with me that this all is a technology problem. This is not a technology problem because technology can do it all. This is a people problem. And we need to understand how we people perceive this visual information and how to process it. And let's make sure that we make it as easy as possible for our audiences to process that. Okay, well, enough about the introduction. Let's dive into the 9.5 tips, as promised in the title. And obviously, we're going to start with the first one. And the first one is as follows. Again, I've got lots of questions for you guys. And here you see I've got 4 different charts. And these 4 different charts all show the same data, exactly the same data. So here you see everything shown as a table. For me, by the way, a table is also a data visualization. Here we have this very fancy bar chart, also called a lipstick chart. We also have here a deviation chart, so the difference in percentage from the budget. And here we have a deviation chart where it's in absolute numbers. Okay, and now my question to you guys, if I would tag each of these, A, B, C, or D, which one do you like most for representing this data? So we've got a couple of regions, we have a budget, and we have an expense number. Which of these 4 is the best, according to you? So pick one. Which one do you think is the best option to visualize this data? A, B, C, or D? Oh, Nick comes with a nice comment. Is it also reverse? Should you use a lot of different colors if you want people not to focus on the data? Definitely, Nick. That's very good that you raised this question, because I always assume that people will use this for good purposes and not for confusing or misleading or guiding people in the wrong way. But definitely, this knowledge can also be applied for the wrong reasons, unfortunately. And it's being done daily. There's some elections coming up in the US in a couple of months. And it's not because US elections are better or worse than others, but elections are always great to see how people, well, use or misuse this for all kind of purposes, unfortunately. So definitely, if you want to avoid any questions, overwhelm them with lots of data, lots of colors, lots of different charts, etc. And people will simply stop asking. Definitely, it works, Nick. I'm not saying you should do this, by the way, I think that's a bad practice, but definitely it happens. Yeah. Hey, your preferences are coming in. I see some B's, some A's. I see a C. And, well, oh, there you go. Nick is a good guy, so that nothing to worry about. Thanks, Nick, for confirming that. Hey, I ask you to select the best one. And nice people as you are, you actually answered the question. Unfortunately, there is no right answer. Sorry for misleading you there. The thing there is, if you only have data, and that's what you have here, you have only one data set, very small data set, and 4 different representations, there is no way at all to select the best visual. And this is strange, because most of the tools that we use today, they all give us suggestions. Whether it's Excel or some sophisticated data visualization tool, they all make suggestions. Oh, maybe you should use this visualization, which is absurd, because the data itself will never determine what the best chart or visualization is. There's something way more important than the data, and that's the question. If you don't know what the question is, how do you know how to formulate an answer? So sorry for misleading you and asking you for make a choice, choose the best one. Hey, the best answer would be, I don't know. Each of these, A, B, C, D, are all the best version, depending on which question you're trying to answer. And this is the first point that we need to stress out here. If you don't know what the reason is, if you don't know which question or questions you're answering with a data visualization, there's no sense in continuing to work on it. You first need to understand, and that's a very big amount of work, first understand what the question is before you can do anything else. Because if you don't know the question, what's the value of the answer? Unfortunately, I come across very often that I go into organizations, they show me their reports and dashboards, and I ask them, which question do you address with this report or dashboard? And everybody is quiet and looking at me like, I don't know. Some manager came in and they asked me for this report, and that's what I gave them. That's a challenge, guys. If we don't know the question, the answer is always right or wrong, depending on how well you're feeling that day. And the other thing we also need to take into account is that we are all busy. We all have exploding inboxes, phone calls to address, kids to bring to school, etc., whatever you do. Yeah. So the first question you need to take into account is that your users will ask themselves, what's in it for me? Is this something for me? Can I do something with this? And if it's vague or the answer is no, they'll ignore it. That's what happens. So please take this into account. We need to start with the why, and we need to understand what our audience will do with it. In short, can you build reports and dashboards that will work for everybody? Maybe, but it's really complex and difficult to build something for everybody, because it also means that you need to take into account the lowest level of knowledge about the topic is what you need to address in your visualization. You can't go any further. And the other thing is, and this is what I very often have, and I have the feeling that most people have this, that you look at a data expression, data visualization, and you wonder, what the heck am I looking at? How many bikes are here? Is there any complete bike in this image, or is this only scrap, etc., etc.? If you can't answer this question, what I'm looking at, do I understand what this means or doesn't mean? Again, if the answer is no, or it's some vague other answer, people will ignore it, continue to do whatever they think they should be doing. I'm not going to address it very much further, but again, I would like to stress, this is for a reason, my first tip, because I see this ignored very often. If you don't know what the question is, stop answering things. You don't know even what the question is, where it's based on. Okay, let's go to 2. And I hope I can tell you today, or convince you today, that this data visualization thing is more science than art. There's lots of artistic people very active in this field. They make really impressive visuals. I'm really impressed by some of the visuals I come across. But the question is, do we need to appeal to people's preferences for colorful things or nice pictures, etc.? Or do we need to communicate some data? Again, communicating data doesn't mean it has to be boring or ugly or whatever. But the main goal here is not to have an impact on, oh, what a nice picture this is. No, the thing is, do we learn something from the data? Have we found something that we wouldn't have seen in other forms? That's what we need to do. So the first objective here is that we need to make sure that the function is respected. It's the answer to one or multiple questions. And then the second step is, how can we make it more appealing? But it's always a second step. And unfortunately, I see a lot of people mixing these up. They first see a very impressive dashboard or report at their neighbors or maybe at some other organization. Then they go back to their own organization and say, oh man, look what I've seen. I want this as well for my data. That's the world upside down. That's never going to work. I've seen so many attempts to do that, to get that done, and it simply doesn't work. Let's have a look then how that works. Well, here you go. Here you've got 4 very basic data sets, you see? Very basic data sets. Every data set has 2 columns, an X and a Y. And a couple of, 10, 12 rows in each of the data sets. And these data sets are very similar. Even if you have a statistics background, you would notice that every variable has the same mean and the same variance. And every data set has the same correlation and linear regression coefficient. They're very close to each other. If I would ask you, what are the differences between these 4 data sets? Probably if I give you some time, maybe a couple of minutes, you will figure it out. What are the differences? What do they have in common, etc. But what if I would show you this data in a more visual form, in a chart? There you go. I now think it takes less than a second to see what the differences are in these 4 data sets. So these 4 data sets expressed in a chart are exactly the same as these 4 data sets expressed in a table. Am I saying here that we should get rid of tables? No. Tables, they serve a very good purpose. They are very strong at something, and it's called precision. 12.74. Wow, that's a lot of precision there. And in a visual form, you will always lose this. Or you need to put the number back in. Okay, that's fine. But that's not the objective of the visual form. This here, this precision is a very clear advantage of a table. And also, individual comparison. Oh, I can compare this 7.71 with this 8.77. I can do that. I can compare that, you see? And so individual comparison and precision, these are the typical superpowers of a table. What are the superpowers of a visual form then, like this chart? Well, here it's about the shape and the direction of the data. And look at this. Oh man, it looks like a very nice rounded shape. You would never guess this round shape if you only would look at the numbers. Or, hey man, look at this. This is all on that same number and there's only one exception. Maybe we would call it an outlier. Shape and direction are way better off if you do it in a more visual form. If you want precision, you probably need a table. One last warning about this. I see a lot of people combining the two. They say, okay, let's use a chart, a bar or a line chart or a scatter plot like this one, and then add the labels to it. Can you imagine if I put the numbers here all next to each other on this chart or maybe here? It would become one big mess. Take into account, if you need both precision and you need direction and form, you probably need to create two visuals. It's a better choice. Combining the two is most of the time a very challenging exercise. So please be careful when you do. First, try to see what you have to do. Then, selecting the right visual is not as easy or straightforward as some of the posters you can get around would suggest. If you want to have some more help, some more guidance on how to select which visual, there is this guy. I don't know if any of you know him. This is Nick Desbarats, and he has written this book, Practical Charts. And he has some very clear guidelines on when to choose which chart. Very cool stuff. So again, I would love to have written this book, but I'm not an author, so that's not going to happen. But this is really a cool book, Practical Charts. And if you're finished with this one, there's also a book, More Practical Charts, with more advanced, more scarce, more very focused type of charts that you can also use. But again, start with this one. Very cool material. Will help you out in selecting when to choose which chart and when not to choose it. Very, very good material. Nick is also very vocal on LinkedIn, by the way. So if you look him up and you follow him, you will also get lots of very good advice on how to work with this. All right. Cutting corners. Obviously, we want to have the short version of the story. We want to do it fast and etc. Well, let's have a look at a typical visualization that you might encounter. Here we have a very impressive visualization about the average male height. It's all in inches, and I personally am more used to centimeters, so for me this doesn't work very well. But again, let's have a look at what this visual representation tells us. Apparently, people from the Netherlands are very tall people. Okay, very good. And people from Indonesia, well, they are not that tall. Even more specifically, they're lucky if they reach the knee height of a Dutch person. And I think we all agree that that's impossible. Eh? People in Indonesia are not that small. They might be smaller, but they're definitely not at knee height. So something goes wrong here in this visual. And unfortunately, this is a very common practice. Is that people, because, well, heights, we want to see slight difference, etc. So this scale here, this Y scale here, does not start at 0. And some people might put a symbol in there like this, or like a lightning, so like this, and then say, okay, but then it's okay. Well, let's be very clear on this. If you use length, and in this chart we definitely use length to represent values. If you use length and you want to compare them, you need to make sure they all start at 0. There is no good excuse to do anything else. This representation of data is very confusing. And I am even tempted to say this is lying with data. This is over-exaggerating the distances that are there. It almost feels like, wow, if you're from the Netherlands, you're way taller than somebody from the UK, you see? Well, it's not that bad. So let's correct this chart. And again, I didn't have to do that. Somebody else did it for me. If you would all start at 0 and you would all have the same baseline and we all use the same, let's say, figures of a human, then this would be the comparison. And yes, okay, Dutch people are taller than English people or UK people, and taller also as Indian or people from Indonesia, but definitely not knee height. Huh? So it's not like Indonesian people don't get any higher than this. That's nonsense. And here with these people, you see this very clear. But this also happens every day, every time, again and again, with bar charts. And so if you have a bar chart, let me draw you one. Sorry for my sketching abilities. There you go. We always need to make sure they all start in 0. Any bar chart that does not start in 0 is by default suspicious. Something's funny going on. And I already told you about my hobby, looking at elections, especially the data around elections. Well, this is a typical trick. They apply all of them. It doesn't matter from which part of the political spectrum you are. Everybody does it. They all cut the axis on the y-axis to exaggerate a difference or to make it even look better or worse, etc. They all do this trick. Unfortunately, it's a very bad practice and we should stop doing this. So if you use length like in a bar chart, make sure you always start in 0. You don't cut something halfway. All right. Let's save the pies for dessert. There's a very famous author in the field of data visualization called Stephen Few, and he is the original source of this statement, save the pies for dessert. And Stephen was very clear on the usage of pie charts. He said, stop doing it. There's better options than the pie chart. There's always a better option than a pie chart. The pie chart is the most worst data visualization ever. This last part, by the way, is my impression of what he meant to say. He never literally said it in that form, but his advice was never use it. And lots of people around the world, because he has done a lot of trainings and his books are very popular because they're really good books, I very often come across people that tell me, pie charts? No. You should never use pie charts. There's even a very interesting a group on LinkedIn called Pie Charts Are Evil. So it's very clear that the people, member of that group, what they think. By the way, I'm also a member of that group. I'm curious to see what their arguments are. But I must admit, I don't think that pie charts are evil. Pie charts might be misused very often. Maybe that's the problem. So a lot of people use pie charts in a situation where they could better use something else, but they're not evil. Definitely not. But let's have a look. Let's have a look at some of the pie charts. I brought with me some pie charts. Here you go. And this is all fruit consumption. And all in a nice pie chart with a nice 3D effect. It looks almost impressive. And I must say that this type of pie chart, the 3D pie chart, I come across this very often in marketing. And what is also very suspicious is that people who use this in marketing, for instance, for market share, that the company that produces the chart generally also positions their market share at the bottom of the chart. For a good reason, by the way, because to create this effect of 3D, we need to make this smaller and we make this bigger and we get this additional band of color pixels just to create the effect. So as you can see, gray and orange are here way bigger than they have to be simply to create this effect. I'm going to make it very easy to you guys, and not only for pie charts, by the way, but in general. There is no good reason for adding third dimension to any data visualization if it's an abstract, if it's an abstraction. So if it's a bar, a line chart, or a pie chart, or a scatter plot, or whatsoever, there's no good reason for adding a third dimension. When is there a good reason for adding a third dimension? Well, only if you're looking at a visualization that's not showing something abstract, but something concrete. Let's say you are a heart surgeon and you need to perform an operation later on a patient. And before you open up the patient, you want to see what is the situation I'm going to be encountering. How does the left chamber of the heart look like, and how is the blood moving from one chamber to the other, etc. Then it makes sense to create a 3-dimensional visualization, because that's also what you're going to be encountering. But let's be honest, I've never tripped literally on a line chart or stepped onto a bar chart or whatsoever. There's nothing concrete there. It's all abstractions. Don't use third dimensions. It only confuses people. Some people say it looks nice. Yeah, okay, cool. Well, if we want to see nice pictures, maybe we have to go to a museum instead of looking at data visualizations. This is not going to help us effectively communicate data. So let's remove the third dimension. Let's get back to the 2 dimension. There you go. And here we have our pie chart. And a classical example, so we have the pie chart there, all these different colors, and obviously we have this legend next to it because we need to be able to distinguish the different categories. And once we start reading it, we have to go back and forth between the legend and the pie chart itself. This is wasting our time. This is very unfortunate. Why can't we make it even easier to read? Well, first of all, let's add some labels to it so that we have something like a percentage or a total value. And obviously, I want to get rid of this legend, and let's use the labels directly. So, okay, these are apples, and these are the bananas, and these are the cherries, and these are the kiwis, etc. You see? It's way easier. It's less intense to process this data. And still, we're not there yet. So it's not perfect either, but we're getting a bit better. A legend, if there's no other option than to use a legend, I'm fine with it. It's your last resort. But if you have other resorts like this, which is called direct labeling, if you can put the label as close as possible to the object, it's better than to have this distance and always have to go back and forth between a legend and the visual itself. So let's direct label. But there's another challenge here with this pie chart, and that's the ordering of the elements. The ordering of the elements is not nicely done. In general, you would like to have a pie chart start at 12 o'clock and then clockwise go from big to small. So let's do that. Here you go. Here we have everything ordered from large to small. Apple is the biggest, raspberry is the smallest. There you go. And still, I'm struggling with the colors. First of all, I'm not sure if you want to eat an apple that's blue or a kiwi that's blue, etc. So maybe that's necessary. And the other thing is, have you seen that we have 3 different colors blue in there? Could it be that there's a relationship between these? Well, maybe there's not. And if I would make this into a bar chart, nobody would accept that I would color every individual bar differently. So why not do the same thing with a pie chart? Let's make it all one color. Looks boring, doesn't it? Yes, I agree. It looks boring, but maybe the data is boring as well. So I don't know. I don't know if this is a problem. But here you go. Here we have a pie chart where we have taken away all the things that could mislead us because some colors look bigger than others. And the order of the elements also has an important role to play. So here we did everything in one color. We ordered it nicely. We direct labeled everything. Again, I'm not saying we should keep all these labels, but we're getting there. But still, Stephen Few and his followers still say, no, this is not a good idea because they say, well, we human beings are not really good at evaluating round surfaces, especially if there's pieces out of it. So comparing these first 3 pieces is very hard for us human beings. And therefore, Few and his followers say, you should create a bar chart. Here you go. And they're right. We are way better at comparing the length of these bars with each other. This is way more effective than the area in some round pointy form. Definitely, they're right. There's no discussion about it. Oh, sorry for that. There's no discussion about it that they are right, that this is more precise. But, you see, there's now a but in the sentence. What if you would say, okay, I want to know how many different foods do I need to go beyond 50%? And this is a typical question where this bar chart might lack in expression and effectiveness. If I go back, or let's say create a new version of my pie chart and do it like this, then here you go. If I take apples, oranges, and cherry, I see that this is still just before 50%. I can see that because this round shape is just before half. And if I add the cherry to it, then I see, okay, apples, oranges, and cherries, that's what I need to at least go beyond the 50%. So this compound analysis, how does this make up altogether? That's really strong for of a pie chart. And in a bar chart, that's not that effective. But yes, if you're going to compare individual components with each other, so which one is bigger, cherry or kiwi, then this one definitely is your tool of choice. But if it's more about the compound, then this definitely will work better. So therefore, let's not ignore the pie chart. We simply need to use it a bit less because very often it's used in situations where it doesn't belong. Where does it belong? It belongs whenever you're showing something that can never go beyond 100%. It shows us the categories that compounds are always 100%, no more, no less. So anything like comparing revenue with a target is not going to fly with a pie chart, because you can go beyond 100%. What do you do then? Yes? So good pie charts are pie charts that start at 12 o'clock. They sort all the components descending clockwise. That's the second one. And then, and this is maybe the one, the hard one, you need to make sure you never have more than 4 pieces. This is challenging. And you see, I had way more than 4. And what did I do? I grouped the last ones together. I gave it a different color to make sure that nobody makes the mistake to say, hey, what kind of fruit is other? So it's definitely something different. And there you go. And then obviously we do direct labeling. And in this example, you see the labels are inside the pie. I personally prefer to keep them outside. And the reason is that if the pie piece becomes really small, you still can read it. Putting it into objects is always challenging if they become really small. But there you go. So the pie chart is not as evil as I would say, but please keep it in mind. Make use of it whenever it suits you. All right, number 5. Apples to oranges. The other day I was reading a newspaper and I came across this very interesting chart. And if you look carefully, you see 2 series, obviously, the red one and the blue one. And the red one looks like pretty stable. At the end, it goes a bit down, but the red one is pretty stable across time. And the blue one, well, it looks like it is like 3 phases. There's a growth phase here, and then there's a but more stable phase here. And here is a huge growth phase again. You see? Wow. That's what we can see. And obviously, I've removed too much context from this chart to be really helpful. But this is what the visual gives us. And the other thing is, maybe very important to see, in the beginning, red was above blue. And in the end, blue was above red. Again, a very important signal that this visual gives us. Let me bring in all the rest of the stuff that was around this chart. So axes and legends and where does it come from, etc. As you can see, it was from May of the Financial Times. And this is about labor force. And you can see that apparently the foreign-born labor force has grown and the native-born labor force is stayed more or less stable. And again, these are US statistics. Let me put some numbers to it. And you can see that this chart is a bit confusing because this 14.5 million is above the 168.2 million. Isn't that strange? I would expect if you have a big number, it goes above the small number. And here, okay, we have the big number above on top and we have the small number below. What's causing this? Well, if you look carefully, you see that they are using 2 independent y-axes. This is the millions for the native born, and this is the millions for the foreign born. Again, I want to give you some very clear guidelines. So after this session, you can apply them. And again, I'm going to give you a very clear one. Having multiple y-axes in a chart is only there for confusion purposes. There is no good reason. We put things together in one chart to allow us to compare them to each other. But if you allow 2 independent y-axes, any comparison is going to be very hard or impossible. So what do we do? What do we do if we want to compare these numbers? Well, again, we could add a lot of detail, or we could all put them to the same scale. I'm a bit lazy, so I didn't want to go through all the data that you're seeing here, so I only picked the starting point and the end point. Again, it's an abstraction that might not suit your purpose, but okay, for now, here you go. And now I've put them both on the same scale. And as you can see, yes, this has slightly gone down, and this has, well, significantly increased. But let's be honest, the native-born is still a way bigger group. I saw people reacting to this chart saying, oh my God, the foreign-born are taking over. On the workforce, they even won. So there's even more foreign-born on the workforce than there are native ones. Come on, guys. That's not the case. And again, I don't care if it's one way or the other, but the data is not trying to tell us this. The data is trying to tell us the following. Yes, foreign-born on the US market have increased significantly, 23%. And the native-born, well, more or less the same. Slightly went down. There you go. So apples to oranges. If you want to compare things to each other, make sure they're on the same scale. Secondary y-axis, although very popular, very easy in all the software products you use, please don't. Avoid them as much as you can. Number 6, and I see I need to speed up because otherwise I'm going to go beyond the time I'm given today. So don't make me think. Obviously, we need to think about the consequences when we see the data, what should we do, etc. But we should not have to think a lot when we see the image and we don't understand what's going on. To give you an example, this chart I have taken from a dashboard some time ago. This was an organization that did everything in weeks. So these are the weeks of the year. And here on the y-axis, you have the revenue in euros, in thousands of euros. And so this organization for this particular year said, okay, guys, let's do around 70,000 is here. 70,000 for that year. That's our target. And then they started measuring the revenue throughout all these weeks, and this is what they got. All right. And I'll save you the whole discussion I had with these people, but they were mentioning that they were seeing this pattern to return every year. Year over year, they were seeing the same pattern. And my question to them was, well, which pattern are you referring to? And they were saying, well, the pattern is as follows. In the beginning of the year, we're pretty close to target, but during the year, our distance to the target grows and grows and grows. So the distance grows from the target. So during the year, something goes wrong. Okay. The funny thing is that this is what we call an indirect measure. An indirect measure means you provide your audience with two components, a target and a revenue, an actual revenue. And then we as an audience need to decide, okay, well, what's the difference here? What's the difference there? What's the difference there? And that's practically impossible for us as an audience. So what would happen if we are not showing you the two components, but we would show you what we call a direct measure, which is the difference. What's the difference between revenue and target per week? Well, here you go. Let's have a look. And there you have the revenue difference expressed. So it's a different chart. And you see that it's in percentages. So we're around 40% below target in the first week. Big challenge. But then you see that there's this rise and rise and rise and rise. And at the end of the year, what is it? 14% below. So the problem is not getting bigger. Look at this. This is the distance. The problem is getting smaller. The problem is still there. I didn't, remove the fact that I didn't meet the target. That's something I cannot do. I'm not a magician. But clearly, the problem is completely opposite to what they thought it was. They thought it was the problem is getting bigger. And the actual problem is getting smaller. Direct measures. Again, it's not replacing the initial one because the initial one has some very interesting properties. The values people recognize is, okay, yeah, the 70,000, that was our goal, etc. But in general, when you look clearly at the question, very often it's about the difference between two things. Well, show them the difference. And here is the percentage. It could also be in absolute numbers. That's fine. And then you see that the problem was big in the beginning of the year, and they worked their butts off to make it a better year later on. And this was a repeating pattern. Yes, it was. And every year they did the same thing. And, well, they didn't learn a lot because they were simply looking at the wrong place. All right. Show your true colors. We already saw in the little test that we did at the beginning of this session that color is very powerful. And color is so powerful that we need to treat it very responsible, which means don't use it too much. I did some searching online, and I thought, you know what? Give me something which normal people would call a dashboard. There you go. Cool, huh? I don't know about you, but my eyes, when they see this for the first time, have no clue what to look for. They have no clue what to focus on, what you should watch, what you shouldn't watch. Everything is colorful. Everything is shouting. Everything is in your face. This definitely will not happen. This is only for confusing purposes. And it's even worse. The colors are not chosen well. And then there's also two color scales. You can see here in the legend. And the two color scales reuse the same colors, but they mean something different. Once it's a cause and the other is a severity. And in some charts, they express with a label what we're referring to. So apparently this critical is this critical. But how about in the line chart? Or how about in this bar chart? How do you know which colors you need to apply there? Interesting, isn't it? Complete confusion goes. If you make things the same color and you are so often changing colors, people assume it means the same thing. And then there's also the other thing with colors is that there is a huge impact from our culture. Again, it's not in the whole world the same, but colors also have meanings. And if you look at the severity rate that you see at the bottom right, and maybe I can even make it a bit bigger so you can see it. Here it says that a critical severity is blue and a near miss is red. I'm not very good into these type of severities, but it feels to me like it's the opposite. It should be the other way around. A near miss is, okay, it was something that happened. It shouldn't have happened, but nothing went wrong. And critical sounds like, whoa, this is a big issue. How can it be that critical is blue and near miss is red? That's not something that we like to do. So definitely we need to think about what the meaning is of color. So in general, I would say, let's keep red as a very important signal color, at least in this part of the world. Works very well. Reserve red for that. And be very careful with applying anything else. One more thing about colors. Our favorite color palettes that all these visualizations love to use. The REC reports, red, amber, and green, traffic light reports, whatever you want to call them. And I brought one with me. Here you go. Very impressive red, amber, and green report. And it's small, I know. No worries. It's intended to be small in this case because the organization that we're using this was printing this originally on A3 papers. So really big sheets of paper to make it readable. And these are the 83 KPIs of a factory. This factory was completely built on the lean principles. And the first time I saw it, my conclusion was, well, your factory might be lean, your reports definitely are not. I don't have a clue what I have to look at. I don't even have a clue what's important and what's not. So the first thing I am always asking when I see the reports, why do you use the color green? And people typically tend to answer me like, okay, well, because I also want to show things are going well. Okay. Can't we make a new deal and say, okay, if the report looks easy on the eye, then you can easily continue to do what you're doing. And if it gets busier, then you also need to get busier. In other words, if we remove green and only show orange and red as the signals that something needs to happen, then it gets easier. Definitely. Very difficult discussion, by the way. People are so used to this. But I want to show you an example because we actually had the opportunity to work on this report. And again, I will not go into the details, but here you have one of the sketches of the alternative that was presented to them. And the only new thing that these people had to learn is that they have to look, let me see if I can show you to you. They have to look here on this side if they encounter any red dots and they go, oh, wait a minute. You see, there's a red dot. So this line needs my attention. And then we continue again. Oh, wait a minute, there's another line. So these two lines, they need my immediate attention. Let's deal with those first, and then we'll continue. I hope you agree that the right-hand version looks way easier on the eye than the left-hand version. Man, this is a lot of work. So let's be careful with these things. All right. Number 8, because we have 7 minutes for the last ones. Number 8, words matter. If you are into data visualization, it's never, ever going to be only the visual because none of us have been born with the native power to read charts. Charts are things that we invented and we need to explain to people how to read them. If you use the usual suspects like lines or bars, most people have learned at school or at work how they work, although there's also a lot of misconception about that. But sometimes you want to use something maybe a bit different because it suits your purpose better, but then you need to explain it. This, by the way, is a really old visualization, and it's a very impressive visualization. Some people even argue this might be the best visual ever. Okay, well, hey, I'm not gonna agree directly. But the thing is, the first time I saw this, I was like, okay, if this is the best visualization ever, probably then not for me. I'm not reading any French, so everything is explained in French. That's not going to fly for me. But then somebody explained to me how this works. What you see here is the march of Napoleon from, let's say, what we today would call the eastern border of Poland. And this is the march of Napoleon all the way to Moscow. And this very wide brown river is the number of troops he brings with him. So 420,000 troops left Poland together with Napoleon. And the closer they got to Moscow, the more people they lost because of fighting, but also because of circumstances. And as you can see, they only arrived with a quarter of the troops at Moscow. And then you see there's also this, what I call the Black River. And the Black River is the return. So Moscow didn't do a lot. So there's still around 100,000 troops there. And then they went back home. And you can see there were some significant situations like here, where they crossed this river. And, mayhem. You see, before the river, there was a nice amount. I think it was 50,000 troops. And after they crossed the river, only half of them survived. Well, long story short, they left with 420,000. They returned with 10,000. What is it? Yeah, 10,000 troops. Yeah, there you go. Wow. Hey, this is pretty impressive. And this was created in the time there were no computers. This was hand-drawn by somebody. Wow, impressive. Mr. Minar, he was a railroad engineer. He created this after his retirement. Very impressive work. But if you don't have the explanation, it's just a picture. So we need to use the words that we have. We need to clarify things. Any data loses context, and we need to clarify this. So we, as the experts, need to clarify our audience how to read things, how to conclude things, etc. Pictures themselves are not ever intuitive by themselves. You need to do something for it. All right, number 9. We're almost through. Chart junk, a concept introduced by Mr. Tufte way back when. Anything that doesn't help to bring across the message, he calls it junk, and we should avoid it as much as we can. Well, I found this very impressive image some time ago. There you go. It's now, what is it? Almost 20 years old. And but still, you can find this type of visuals everywhere. And I'd like to focus on the one on the left. You see these bars? And this is all about the consumption of metals in US. And as you can see, this green bar is the highest. And then this blue bar is the second highest. And then obviously the question is, well, how much bigger is the green one than the blue one? Just as a comparison reason. And by the way, the green one is phosphorus and the blue one is aluminium. And how much bigger is phosphorus than aluminium? That's a hard question to answer here, especially because they made use here of a logarithmic scale. Most of us have difficulties reading these. So what I did is I recreated the scale, but this time as a linear scale. So I didn't make it logarithmic. This is a linear scale. And here you see phosphorus is the big one, 107,000, and aluminium is 20,000. As you can see, aluminium is only, a fifth of phosphorus. This here is the same expression of these numbers on a logarithmic scale. Man, that makes it hard. So the scale makes it hard. Then there's all these colors. Then there's a very, I don't know why, ordering of these elements. So let's do next. Well, let's order them. If there's no other reason not to do it, why not order the elements? And now we can easily compare. Okay, so these are the top 5 or 6 elements there. Imagine if you have to do that with your other chart there. So let's limit this junk. Okay, and now we had 9, now 9.5, because some of you, I've received some emails up front. What's this half? What's this half? Well, obviously, I need to share that with you. And it's nothing about the content. It's about the approach. Data visualization, there are 2 big enemies. The first enemy is data itself. Data is too complex to simply dive in and look at it and judge it at face value. You need to be careful there. And the other thing is technology, all the tools that you use. If you want to do and build good data visualizations, you need to make sure you first understand the question and you need to start sketching. And I know lots of people tell me, but I can't draw. Believe me, I can't draw either. But drawing data visualizations is very straightforward. We need to do this. And the moment you start doing this, and I'm talking drawing with pencil and paper, you'll see that other people will help you out, even the ones that ask for the report. And I actually am very proud of the fact that most of the reports and dashboards and visualizations I draw never get built. You know what the good news is? They never get built because the people, when they see the sketch, think, that's actually not what I was expecting. But if you have built it with the data you have, you're too late. So let's be careful. Let's ask more questions. Let's start sketching. And I'm sure that we'll make more effective data visualizations. One last slide to wrap it up. You know when you have achieved perfection in design and also in data visualization, not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing more to take away. And here, this little rabbit, if you don't know it, she is called Miffy. And Miffy is a very basic drawing. If you take any line, any element away, it's no longer Miffy. For me, she is the symbol of what we need to achieve in data visualization. Make sure you keep cutting things away that are not necessary there. And when you have the essence and you go one step too far, then you go one step back and you're there. Let's stop putting all these papers, all these screens full of moving elements that don't make any sense. That's what we need to achieve. Again, I've never achieved it yet, but I'm still trying.
Okay, thank you, Michel. It was a very nice, micro course. A lot of interesting input. It was also nice the interaction in the beginning. Just before we round up, a quick insight for everybody. So this was a Effective Data Foundation course given to you by the Effective Data Foundation. There's several certifications by the Effective Data Foundation. There's data literacy. This one was more about data visualization. Quite some content is applicable for both courses. There's also other subjects like data analytics and generative AI, where there's content created for. It's part of a certification, so afterwards you can get certified if you do a course with one of the various training providers that are out there. There's accredited training providers. I quickly wrap it up. And we have a certification roadmap for organizations to understand, okay, where do you start with the entire data and AI journey? And well, maybe not where you finish, but where do you start? Everybody now jumps onto AI. Maybe that's a bit rash. And this is one of the domains, one of the subjects we quickly want to give you some insights in. If you want to know more, there's also a book available, there's course content and the certification. We have training partners. And Michel, thank you for this quick insights into the content, into the course. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me, and I hope everybody can benefit from the content. And if you have any questions, you probably know where to find me. I'm on LinkedIn, so approach me if you have any questions, suggestions, or whatsoever. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Have a good day, and goodbye, everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.